You can spend thousands of dollars on plants, mulch, and a brand new patio. And your yard can still look unbelievably cheap the second someone pulls into your driveway. That is not a budget problem. It is a handful of small, specific choices that quietly undercut everything else you paid for, and most homeowners have no idea they are making these mistakes. Professional garden designers see the same 10 mistakes over and over, on expensive properties and modest ones alike, and every single one of them has a fix that costs little to nothing. Stick around, because number 6 is the one landscapers say they notice from the street before they even walk up your driveway, and it takes about an hour to fix. Here is the pattern behind almost everything on this list. Cheap does not mean inexpensive. Cheap means visually chaotic, uncared for, or mismatched. A yard can be built on a shoestring budget and still look expensive if it is intentional, edited, and consistent. A yard can also have a 5-figure landscaping bill behind it and still look cheap if it is cluttered, neglected, or randomly assembled. Once you see that distinction, every fix on this list makes sense, and the pattern will start jumping out at you on every drive through your own neighborhood, not just your own yard. A lot of this comes down to restraint rather than addition, which is honestly good news, because it means most of these fixes cost far less than adding something new would. Let's go through all 10. Number 1, too many garden ornaments. A bird bath here, a couple of garden gnomes there, a windmill, a decorative sign, a few animal statues scattered around the beds. Individually, none of these are the problem. Together, they create visual clutter so intense that a visitor's eye has nowhere to actually land, bouncing from object to object instead of taking in the yard as a whole. The fix is brutal but effective. Pick your single favorite piece, the one you would keep if you could only keep one, and put the rest in storage or give them away. One well-placed bird bath or one tasteful bench reads as intentional design. 6 competing pieces reads as a yard sale that never ended. If you genuinely cannot bear to part with a collection, group it in one contained spot, like a shelf near a shed, rather than scattering it across the whole yard, since containment turns clutter into a display. Designers call this editing, not decorating, and it is genuinely the cheapest design skill you can develop, because it costs nothing but a little willingness to put things away. Number 2, neon or mismatched plastic pots. Bright red, cobalt blue, or shiny plastic planters might catch your eye at the garden center, but scattered around a yard, they compete with your actual plants instead of supporting them. The fix here is almost free. Choose planters in muted, natural tones, terracotta, charcoal, weathered wood, stone gray, so the pots recede and the plants inside them become the actual focal point. If you already own bright plastic pots, a can of matte spray paint in a neutral tone is a $5 fix for an entire collection, and it takes about an afternoon to redo every pot you own. The goal is not to eliminate color from your yard entirely, it is to let the color come from flowers and foliage, which change and rotate with the seasons, rather than from a container that stays the exact same jarring shade all year round. Number 3, sloppy, undefined bed edges. This is the mistake landscapers mention more than almost anything else, because it is invisible until you actually look for it, and then you cannot unsee it. When grass creeps into a garden bed, or the line between lawn and mulch is fuzzy and uneven, the entire yard reads as unfinished, no matter how nice the plants inside that bed actually are. A crisp, clean edge, cut with a simple half-moon edger or a spade, takes maybe 20 minutes per bed and instantly makes the whole yard look sharper and more expensive, even if you change absolutely nothing else. Do it once at the start of the season, and then just touch it up every few weeks with a string trimmer. And that one habit alone will do more for how polished your yard looks than almost any plant purchase you could make. If you want an even lower maintenance version, a strip of steel or plastic landscape edging installed once will hold that crisp line for years without any repeat work from you at all. Number 4, planting one of everything instead of repeating in groups. A single lavender, a single hosta, a single ornamental grass, each planted alone and scattered around the yard, might feel varied, but it actually reads as random and thin. In nature, plants grow in drifts and clusters, not lonely single specimens, and your eye instinctively recognizes that pattern as more polished. The fix, instead of buying one of 10 different plants, buy 3 or 5 of 2 or 3 plants and group them together. A cluster of the same plant repeated through a bed instantly looks more designed and more expensive than the same total number of plants scattered as singles. This does not mean your garden has to be boring or repetitive overall. It means each individual grouping should feel intentional. So you might have 3 or 4 different clusters throughout a bed rather than 10 different single plants competing for attention in the same space. Number 5. Dead or dying plants left in place. Brown, crispy, half-dead shrubs and yellowing perennials sitting in prominent spots broadcast neglect louder than almost anything else in this list, and they do it instantly, from the street, before anyone even notices the healthy plants around them. Even a beautifully designed, expensive landscape starts to look abandoned the moment maintenance slips. The fix is simple, but requires actually doing it. Walk your yard every couple of weeks. Pull anything that is clearly dead. Cut back anything that is struggling and replace gaps promptly instead of letting an empty, dead patch sit there for a whole season. Keep a couple of cheap, fast-growing filler plants on hand specifically for this purpose. So when something dies unexpectedly, you can plug the gap within days instead of staring at bare dirt until your next trip to the garden center. Quick pause before we keep going, because there is a pattern worth naming here. Every mistake so far costs almost nothing to fix, and that is exactly the point. None of the first 5 items required a bigger budget, they required attention. The next 5 lean a little more into upkeep and structure, but the theme holds all the way through this list. Expensive-looking yards are built on consistency, not on how much money went into the original install. Number 6, faded, patchy, or too thin mulch. This is the one I mentioned at the start, and it is genuinely the fastest, cheapest fix on this entire list. Mulch fades from a rich brown to a dull, sun-bleached gray over the course of a season, and once it does, every bed in your yard starts reading as tired and neglected, even if the plants inside those beds are thriving. A fresh, even layer of mulch, in a consistent color and depth across every bed, is one of the single highest return on investment projects in all of landscaping, and it typically takes less than an hour per bed with a wheelbarrow and a rake. Stick to one mulch type and color across your entire property rather than mixing red mulch in one bed and brown in another, because that inconsistency reads as patchwork even when each individual bed looks fine on its own. Number 7, evenly spaced solar lights along every path. This one is subtle, but landscape lighting designers call it the runway effect. A straight line of identical little lights marching along a walkway like an airport runway instead of like a curated garden. It looks like something dropped in from a big box store rather than something designed for your specific yard. The fix use lighting sparingly and intentionally, a couple of uplights on an interesting tree, one warm light near a seating area, dark space left between fixtures instead of even mechanical spacing. Fewer, better-placed lights consistently look more expensive than a full runway of identical stakes. If you already own a set of evenly spaced solar lights, you do not have to throw them out. Simply pull every other one and relocate the extras to highlight a specific feature instead, which instantly breaks up that mechanical marching line effect. Number 8, worn-out furniture and structures nobody has touched in years. A faded, sagging patio umbrella, a rusted metal chair, a shed with peeling paint, these age a yard instantly, and unlike plants, they do not get better with a season of growth, they only get worse. The fix does not always mean replacing everything. A coat of exterior paint on a tired shed, a fresh set of outdoor cushions, or simply retiring one clearly broken piece of furniture can lift the entire feel of a space for a fraction of the cost of full replacement. Walk your yard and ask honestly which pieces you would be embarrassed to have a guest sit on or look at closely, because those are almost always the pieces dragging the whole space down. Number 9. Overgrown shrubs swallowing your house. Foundation plantings that have not been pruned in years start climbing over windows, hiding architectural details, and blocking the front door from view. Instead of framing your home, they hide it, and a hidden home reads as neglected even if the landscaping itself is expensive and well chosen. The fix: step back from the street, look at your own house the way a stranger would, and prune anything that is blocking a window, a door, or a feature you actually want visible. Plants should frame your home's best features, never bury them. This is also one of the fastest ways to add real value if you are ever planning to sell, because appraisers and buyers both respond strongly to a home that is visible and well framed from the street rather than one hiding behind a wall of overgrown greenery. Take a photo from the sidewalk before you prune and another one after, and the difference will almost always surprise you, since it is very easy to lose track of how much a shrub has grown when you walk past it every single day. Number 10. Weeds growing in patio and path joints. Nothing undercuts an expensive paver patio or a nice stone path faster than a thin green line of weeds pushing up through every joint and crack. It is such a small detail, and it is also one of the fastest visual signals of neglect that exists, because it means nobody has touched that surface in weeks or months. The fix is cheap and mechanical: a stiff joint brush, a pull of the weeds by hand, or an application of polymeric sand in the joints to physically choke out new growth before it starts, done once or twice a season. This is a 5-minute task if you stay on top of it regularly, and a much bigger one if you let an entire season of weeds establish deep root systems in every crack before you finally deal with it. So here is how to actually tackle this list without burning an entire weekend. Start with the two cheapest, fastest fixes: fresh mulch and crisp bed edges, because those two alone visually reset almost the entire yard in an afternoon for the cost of a bag or two of mulch. Then walk your property with completely fresh eyes, the way a stranger seeing it for the first time would, and simply remove anything that reads as clutter, damage, or neglect before you add a single new thing. Expensive-looking yards are rarely about spending more money. They are about editing ruthlessly and keeping what is left consistent, clean, and intentional. Go stand at the end of your driveway or your front sidewalk today. Look at your own property like a stranger seeing it for the first time, and you will probably spot 2 or 3 of these instantly, sitting there waiting for a single free afternoon. Fix those 2 or 3 first, come back to this list in a month, and check off a few more, and by the end of the season your yard will read as a completely different property, without a single major purchase behind it. If this changed how you are going to look at your own yard, subscribe, because next week we are covering the 10 cheap upgrades that instantly make a yard look more expensive, the exact opposite side of this list. See you in the next one.